It's hard to take somebody whacking you with a tobacco stick with a grain of salt, but you somehow did it. Hello and welcome to Behind the Lens, an inside look at what it's like to gather TV news. I'm Stuart Pittman, chief photojournalist for Queen City News Plus, and I'm glad you're here. This week, we're talking about stress and how a long day behind the lens can leave you a little agitated. You think watching the news is stressful?
This is incredibly scary!
You should try shooting it.
Face the fence! Face the fence!
Live shots, deadlines,
I'm optimistic about what's going to happen today.
and everything in between. Why, it's even enough to make you consider
Call the wall! Call the wall!
a quiet line of work. Oh, that's just rude. Ben Gaucher, has anyone been that rude to you?
Pretty close, yeah. I've been threatened a few times.
I can bet you are. Let me introduce you. Joining me is Ben Gaucher, chief photojournalist. You've just been promoted.
Yes, I'll take it.
Joining me is Ben Gaucher, photojournalist for Queen City News Plus, and you have made TV all over the country, pretty much, haven't you?
Yep. Louisiana, Alaska, Ohio, North Carolina.
Is it all the same everywhere?
No, it differs. Every aspect of it differs. You know, there's the common things, obviously, but things are definitely different in different places for sure.
What about your job stresses you out?
Whew. I know probably the unknown is definitely one of the things. But you know, like in some of the video that we saw, you know, things like rallies or violent type things, right, or, you know, or just things that you definitely can't control at all. You know, that can be very stressful.
You know, but you're not there to control things, of course. You're there to document things. And,
right.
And to do that, you have to be technically ready at all times.
Yeah. So it's all about, you know, setting yourself up for success, you know, whether it's, you know, batteries, cameras, microphones, and just kind of like looking into what may or may not happen and having just kind of like maybe 3 or 4 different game plans. Right. And then whichever one, however it unfolds, hopefully you'll have one, you know, set for that. So
sure. You get somewhere and you're there to shoot a story, and no matter whether the material at hand is trivial or tragic, you've got a very tight turnaround. Say you get there at if you're lucky, 11 o'clock in the morning. The story you're working on is going to air at 4:30. How can that get stressful?
There's, you know, so many different ways. You know, obviously, I know a lot of people out, you know, out there in the communities or whatever. I don't think they realize how quickly we turn things around. Sure. They don't, you know, we have to work. I can tell you how many times I've had to work in my car, editing on a laptop in my car. You know, you're dealing with people that, you know, may be running late. You're dealing with people that will say, "Hey, can we do an interview at 3:30?" I'm like, well, could we maybe do it at, you know, 2:30? You know, you always have a team. You have a reporter. They usually have their time limit to get done by 3 o'clock, you know, and then you have your, you know, once you get your track and everything, you might have, if you have 45 minutes, if I have 45 minutes to edit, I mean, that's like really all you can ask for. And then a lot of times you may have to set up a live shot as well. Sure. Yeah, it's really stressful. And especially, you know, if you're like, you know, we don't just do video, we do audio, we do lighting. We're on the phone with the station, you know, so it's a lot of things going on at once, and you have to be doing 3 or 4 things at once, but also not neglect anything to have something fall over and, you know, break or whatever. So
I find that when I spend a day like that, I drive home at the end of the day with the radio off in complete silence, because the whole day has just been, you know, input and action. And I don't always have an appetite for that after 10, 11 hours of it. As a photojournalist, you have exposure to everything. And I think that's the beauty and the curse of what we do. But you never know what you're getting into. Like we discussed, you walk in the morning and it could be something very trivial. It could be a bloodmobile event, not to discount the bloodmobile, but it could be something that's just a matter of being there for a few minutes, or it could be several weirdly parked police cars in a part of town
Yeah.
you'd probably rather not be in,
Yeah.
with a lot of angry, emotional people coming
Yeah.
out of their homes.
Yeah, and a lot of times, you'll hear something, and even if you're talking about maybe a call or a tip or whatever, it'll start as one thing, and then it turns out it's something different, and sometimes you have to wait around for three. I just did
Right.
that a couple days ago, waiting around for about 3.5 hours before someone comes, and they'll give you some actual, more in-depth information, letting you know what actually happened, what's going to happen with the current situation, because everybody has their job to do.
Right.
We think about ourselves, we think about getting our job, but police or whoever, everyone has their job to get done, and everyone's job is most important to themselves. And that's just how it is. So yeah, it can make things really tough.
Well, that's one thing I wanted to point out. As much as we're here talking about photojournalism and journalism and the trauma we experience, it's really nothing compared to
Yeah.
both the people involved and the first responders.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm using the term correctly, but I've always thought of us news crews as third responders.
Yeah.
We're on scene.
Yeah.
We're not actively involved, but
Yeah.
we're trying to document everything.
Well, I can tell you, I feel a whole lot better if I'm not first. If they are police and everything, I definitely feel a lot better if those guys are on scene first. That's for sure.
Sure. We had talked about this before. News crews, journalists, a lot of people in our particular line of work get a reputation for being kind of cynical and jaded and burnt out and not really caring about anything and sort of having a I've seen it all attitude. That is the case with some people, but not everybody. You've done this a long time. What's been your experience with that?
Yeah, so it's kind of like I was telling you. You see a lot of things. You really see. There's things we can hear this happen or that happen, but when you're actually in there and you're talking to the family, you're in their living room, and you're watching like a mom just crying over losing a kid or losing a brother or sister or whatever. It really puts you in the moment, and it becomes a lot more than just like a headline that you hear,
Certainly.
And so we become accustomed to a lot of things like, oh, there was, a shooting or this or that, but it never gets any easier, being in that living room, listening to those things. And you definitely, people become, I don't know, I feel like people have become a lot more, not to say more important, but I can, feel a lot more empathy in this job, because you see, I mean, you're right
up close
there, and you feel it. You're in their home, and you feel it. And I was somewhere a couple days ago, and I heard like a mom like screaming because there was like a
washed
gunfight or
up to
whatever.
some
And
of
mom's
the
screaming,
buildings that are here.
That
sticks with you.
honestly, that it probably gets harder. You know what I mean? It probably gets harder. So yeah, the initial, seeing it on a board, in uptown this happened, or in over there that happened, you're used to it, but it never gets any easier when you're there hearing it personally.
It doesn't. If you've shot news for a while and not shed a tear behind the lens, then we probably can't hang out because we're exposed to so much. It's impossible not to be heartfelt and really struck by some of it. Ben, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it. We're going to have you back on the show and talk about something maybe a little happier.
Yeah,
This
anytime.
All right, guys. Thanks. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Behind the Lens, an inside look at what it's like to gather TV news. This week, we're talking about stress. And someone who knows that stress all too well is my old cohort, Chris Weaver, WGHP Fox 8 lens slinging legend and king of all things NASCAR. Weaver, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Stuart. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for being here. Like I said, we're talking about stress this week, workplace stress. Every workplace has its own stress. Ours, I think, has even more stress than most jobs or a lot of jobs. What about your job stresses you out?
I mean, it's deadlines all the time. I think deadlines. And it's not like, I always joke it's not rocket surgery, but, we're not necessarily going to cost anybody their lives with our deadlines. But it's bad on the air if you have a big old piece of black where video is supposed to be. So we're always facing the next deadline, and it doesn't matter what story we're on or how easy the story was. If we're not ready with that story, if it's not shot, if it's not written, if it's not edited, we're in trouble.
Talk to me about the tight turnarounds that your average news crew has. I know that you work on a lot of special projects without people, by yourself and with others, but for the average news crew that is going out to turn a story for that evening, how much time do they have to do all that?
Not very much. I can look at just this past Monday when we had the torrential rain come through our area over in Alamance County, and they sent us out in the morning after the morning meeting. You head over that way about 9:30. You get there at 10:30. You're looking at getting everything shot and produced. Some people had noon live shots. We're lucky we didn't. But we did have a live shot at 4, at 4:30, at 5, at 5:30, at 5:40, at 6, and at 6:30. And we had to have elements written, edited, sent back for all of those bits. So, figuring out how much time can I spend shooting video, how many different locations can I get to, where are we going to go live from? All of this is running through your head, and you're, building up all of this energy, knowing that you have a deadline looming at 4 o'clock. And certainly between those live shots and in that 20 to 25 minutes between, you can edit a little bit more stuff. It doesn't all have to be done up front, but that's the kind of day an average news crew sees these days. There's a constant need to feed the beast. Every news station around here, at least, has news from 4 to 8 o'clock at night. Every half hour, a news crew that's working in a certain time period has to be ready to go live on whatever story they're on any day. And that it's a little bit atypical because it was a big news event.
Right.
There are not always super big news events going on, but that's kind of a typical day when you get sent out and you're paired up with a reporter and you're grabbing bits and pieces here and there, and it's all got to get done or you're not going to have anything on the air.
Well, look, you've been doing that very thing for
Sabrina has
30
launched up
years.
to some of the
All right.
What effect does that have on you? What kind of wear and tear does doing that most every day for 30 plus years have on you, you think?
I think it bogs me down early in the day. The thrill is when it's all over with and done, and you're like, whoo, that dopamine rush, the adrenaline rush of it being done, and you don't have anything else to do is the great feeling. But early in the day, having all of that, you have to get it done. It's like a big squeeze. It's like on your shoulders. It's like, am I going to get it done? How am I going to get it done? And I think, it's stress for sure. Different people handle it differently.
Sure.
For myself, it's when I get to a point where I'm over sort of the hump in the day and I know it's all downhill from here is when, it gets a little better.
Sure. Talk to me about exposure to trauma and tragedy. Certainly on scenes, we're not the ones most involved. We're sort of on the sidelines. We're not the victims. We're not the first responders, but we're there. And you go and attend enough sad things like that, it kind of leaves a mark on you. Has it affected you think, in all these years?
I think like normal first responders, you hear firemen and police and EMS say, you kind of get numb to it. You get used to it. And I'm not saying that in an offhanded kind of way. You learn how to compartmentalize and know that over here there's tragedy, and know you're not necessarily part of it, but you're empathetic to it. But you learn how to deal with it. You learn how to not let it affect you in a way that any other civilian that comes upon some kind of tragedy might. But it still, affects you. I still think back on when I drive down certain roads, when I drive past certain areas, I can see vividly in my head, even right now as I talk about it, things that happened that no ordinary person wants to see, places where people lost their lives, places where really bad tragedies happened, and it sticks with you. And literally driving down the road past where those things happen can trigger a memory, and you just have to shake your head and shake it off and
Sure.
maybe shoot up a little prayer or something.
Well, here's a memory I want to trigger, only because it's just so strange, and I don't want to get into the details of the person's name and all that, but there's a clip that lives on, and a quote of Call the Law that only you, Chris Weaver, can explain. Let's roll it real quick if we can, and just watch it.
But, you better get that mother camera. Don't touch me, dude. Don't touch me. You hit me. Call the law. Call the law.
All the law. Weaver, I'm not laughing at you, man. That was quite something. Explain to us.
I'll bust you upside the head, you son. I'll bust that camera on to hell.
That's a little
You don't
rude.
know who you with.
At any rate,
You better get down to the damn note.
man,
Channel 8.
dude won't stop.
Them horses being fed.
Those horses have been fed, Chris Weaver. Why are you bothering that man? All right, look, you were on scene shooting video of some allegedly malnourished horses.
Yeah.
What happens then?
Well, we had been out there a few times and we knew what we were getting into. And we know, as anybody who's covered news long enough knows, if you mess with people's kids or mess with people's animals, you could elicit a bad reaction. And,
Sure.
you know, people who treat animals badly are probably the worst offenders when it comes to defending their position.
Right.
So we go out there, and my reporter, now anchor, Katie Nordine, is at the door of a nearby neighbor, and she's talking to him. And I had an earpiece in, and she had a microphone in her hand, so I knew what she was saying. And the people at the door said, "Yeah, we called him and told him you were down here." And immediately I was like, "That man's going to show up, and he's going to confront us," because he had already been on the phone with the reporter earlier in the day or the night before, giving her a piece of his mind about it all.
So when he rolled up, you knew who he was.
Exactly. I knew exactly what was coming. I saw the car come to a stop right here and him head toward me. And I was like, all right, this isn't going to be good. And it certainly wasn't. He didn't just yell and scream. He hit me with that stick. I mean, that stick landed a big blow right across my thigh and my calf muscle, left a big old welt for a few days. He hit across the handhold on my camera, busted the grip that we hold our cameras with. And then kept on. He was throwing rocks at the truck, hitting the back of the truck as I was standing in it. And some of the in-between time between the actual confrontations, he was back a little bit, still yelling and doing whatever he was doing. And, you know, Katie got on the phone, with 911 and told them the situation. And she got in the front seat of the truck so I could pack up and we could drive away if we needed to. And
well, Chris, you're enough of a professional to sort of take that with a grain of salt. It's hard to take somebody whacking you with a tobacco stick with a grain of salt, but you somehow did it. And I know that probably hurt your pride a little bit, but it shouldn't have, because you did exactly what you should have done, which was kind of nothing.
Well, I knew that, you know, I didn't want to be seen, you know, beating up an old man. You know, and that's not our jobs. I think de-escalation is probably first priority in any situation like that. And I knew I was rolling videotape. He didn't necessarily know I was rolling videotape, and I don't want to make myself look stupid. That's kind of, you know, your thought process is de-escalate. You know, back then, that was 2011. Not every single thing was on tape like it is today or on video.
Right.
Going out to the world necessarily, you know, we were sort of in that muddle period. Everybody didn't have iPhones yet.
Right.
But I knew I was rolling, and I always know in a situation that I'm rolling, and I've got to, you know, let's see if I can de-escalate this or see what happens.
Well, you came away with a clip for the ages, and I'm glad it didn't get any worse than it did. But I want to thank you for sharing that clip with us, and thank you for sharing your time with us. We're going to have you back on because, Chris, you have done maybe more than I've done in this business, which I even hate to admit. But you've got a lot of things going on. When NASCAR season kicks back on, we're going to have you back. But before we let you go and go to break, can I have just one call the law?
Call the law?
Call the law. Call the law, indeed. Chris Weaver, WGHP Fox 8, Lynn Slinging legend. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon. And we'll be right back. And welcome back to Behind the Lens, an inside look at what it's like to gather the news. This week, we're talking about stress, and to help us understand that even more, we're joined by Dr. Sharice Johnson, psychotherapist. Thank you very much, ma'am, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We've had some fun in our previous segments about stress on the job, both the big and the small. But I'd love to hear from you a more educated perspective on it. I sometimes wonder, do journalists and photojournalists have a job that's more stressful than the person making sandwiches at the restaurant? I don't know that we do.
Yeah, I would say you unequivocally have a job that has a higher level of stress. You know, when you think about being behind the lens, you're also trying to navigate really dark moments while balancing that with your own humanity at the speed of light. And there's a constant change. And so there's so many layers. I'm sure we'll get into it as we go along around what's going to happen. But a lot of individuals in your field will have what we call vicarious trauma because you are the observer. You are looking and quickly taking this in, but not being given a lot of time to actually process it.
Right. And not a lot of context usually. And just the rapid fire accumulation of crime scenes, fires, court, all that kind of stuff. It in your mind, it stacks up so quickly, it becomes a blur. I've been to thousands of crime scenes. I can remember about 6.
Yeah. And that, while it's protective, can also be really challenging. So what's happening in the brain, when you mentioned that, is because it stacks up so quickly, you have this constant adrenaline rush that you're trying to mute so that you can stay calm, get the shot, protect yourself. Am I missing something?
Right.
But then the brain will start to repress it or dissociate from it. So that's a means of protecting yourself. What I often find in individuals that I talk to that are in your field is that carries over into real life. So then in other parts of your life where I should probably be a little bit more reactive to this situation, you're blunted and the people around you are like, what's wrong with you? That's a big deal. But in your mind, you may not communicate it. You're like, I see things worse than this all the time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's hard to get upset about the neighborhood fracas
Correct.
when you just came from a drive-by shooting.
Yes. And, sometimes you'll say that to people that understand. Sometimes you get to a point in life where you just get tired of saying it. But for some people, it can be really challenging. It can make you come off as crash or make it seem like your humor is dark.
Right.
And it's not so much that your humor is necessarily dark, but it's your way of going, if we don't lighten up this moment and
Right.
all of these moments, then we won't survive and be able to stay in this field.
I will say the somewhat dark humor that you'll hear at a crime scene where you've got 4 or 5 news crews who more than anything are just standing around and waiting. There's plenty to do, but it comes in quick bursts and pockets of activity, but there's a lot of standing around and there's dark humor. It's not particularly vicious, but I will say some of the best stories I've ever heard have been on the side of the road where people are trading war stories. And it's always a case of, you think this is bad. One time I went to something so-and-so.
Yeah.
And I think that's therapeutic. We get a lot of therapy from that. I don't know why.
No, there's a lot of therapy from that. You're having this conversation with other people that helps normalize, okay, I'm not the only person who's been through this. And it creates this dynamic where you feel for those few moments you're not alone. It also helps you take your mind off of what's happening in the moment.
Okay.
So if we can go to those old stories that are a little bit distant,
Yeah.
then it helps separate us from the chaos that's happening in front of us. So you're kind of going between reality and the past, back and forth, which is a necessary way to get out of the magnitude of that moment.
How does someone with a job like ours counteract that stress? I know there are probably lots of ways that stress manifests itself in bad ways and unhealthy ways. And I know there's not a blanket answer for all, but
Mhm.
what do you do?
Couple things that could be helpful. One is to have a post-segment ritual, something that you consistently do after you come out of the field. So in between, turning in your equipment and signing off for the day and getting home, having something that you consistently do. That could be, honestly, voice journaling, journaling by hand. It may be talking to a friend about something that has nothing to do
Right.
with whatever you've been through. I will even sometimes encourage people to make playlists. Music playlists is a really great way
Sure.
to zone out and have them literally based on these are all of my favorite songs and there's no way my mind can't go to my best memories. I can see you looking right now and thinking of this is what I would have on it, but make that a part of the process. Sometimes what I'll also encourage is use your clips in your pictures. And you have to do this, with a little bit of a understanding of yourself, not to re-traumatize yourself, but to give yourself a chance to go, how did I actually feel about what was happening there?
Right.
And is there any part of this scene that I'm still carrying that I need to let go? Because that's the part that gets overlooked is you might see something with a child that reminds you of your own. And then you have this interaction and then you go home and everyone's like, whoa, you're overreacting, but it's all happening so fast. So those are 2 in particular things. And if it's necessary and you feel like, okay, I'm starting to feel blunted, I want to feel, and I don't feel like I can access those feelings as much as possible, then I absolutely encourage talk to somebody, talk to a professional where you can come and sit. I will often talk to people I support in the media and go, what do we need to leave here? What do you want to leave in the office? Let's talk about it. You get to say all of the things that you worry about saying in front of other people that you filter,
Sure.
and then leave it with me and then walk out lighter.
It's always good to have someone to talk to, whether it be a therapist, a spouse,
Yeah.
a minister, anybody. I know that I benefit from that myself. I find that after a long day of chasing news, I drive home with the radio off in complete silence, and then I turn music on at home and I sweep my garage.
Yes. Yeah. Well, movement, right?
Right,
You're like, I
right.
need to do something
Right.
that's meaningful, but really low cost. And that's really great. You know, when you said I go home in complete silence, that's great. So the other thing that I would encourage is try to eliminate extra exposure because we're in this situation in life where you're inundated. You can't even pump gas anymore without hearing the latest things that are going on. So really monitor when you need more quiet. And maybe that's part of the ritual is that you go, I need to come inside, but I need a few minutes to go to my chair and just sit, and kind of come down physically and then integrate with the family or whoever else, your dog, whoever else is in your life.
This has been very enlightening. I have one last thing, and it's my own private theory. If you're a photojournalist, you can very much put your head down and just go to where the desk sends you, and you look up and 20 years have gone by.
Yeah.
I would recommend to all young photojournalists to the television camera on your shoulder is a magical thing. It can go good and go wrong, and I suggest to people to find a community to uplift with that camera. Otherwise, you're going to spend your career looking at a parked police car and wondering what's going on.
Yeah.
And I hope that people will in our craft will understand, and I know that they do, just how powerful a tool the exposure TV camera brings, and that has helped me find some meaning in all the rigmarole.
Yeah. No, I love that. It's such a good counterbalance to I'm using this for purpose, but it's a different one, and it's one that you've chosen. Right. Because a lot of times as well, you're not really given too much choice around what you shoot. It's just go here, do this. But with, what you just said, it's a chance for you to go, I want to use this in a way that I find meaningful and purposeful. And I know the full context and I'm going to enjoy watching this. That's powerful.
Well, so is your message today. It's been very powerful, and it's helped me understand some of the things that I've always done, but never really sort of wrapped my head around. I'm losing my earbud. Dr. Charise Johnson, thank you so much.
You're so
This
welcome.
has been very enlightening, and I want to do more of this because I'm a big believer that the television news photojournalist is a fascinating unsung hero with a million layers, and I want to explore every one of them.
Agreed.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you. You've been watching Behind the Lens, an inside look at what it's like to gather TV news. I'm Stuart Pittman, and we'll see you next time.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.